All right, welcome back. Yomi Olugbenro is joining us now, the West Africa tax leader, Deloitte Nigeria. Hello, Yomi, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Nancy. Good to be on your show.
Good to have you too, Yomi. What a day to be on the program, because it's been gbas everywhere concerning concerning what's been happening in the crypto market. But we're not looking at that. We've done that at least in the first half of the program. Now, let's talk about the Finance Act, because I still think that a lot of people need to understand the Finance Act 2020. Some people have not yet fully understood what the Finance Act 2020 is about. What is the strategy? What is the significant difference between Finance Act 2020 and Finance Act 2019? Because there were significant changes. Speak to me about some of those changes.
Right. So you're very right. So the context and the environment for Finance Act 2019 is quite different from Finance Act 2020. At the cross of the change in 2019, were measures that were, primarily focused on how to assist government in raising more revenues, close a number of loopholes and gaps, and we were preparing for a bumper 2020 tax year. But COVID happened, and so government had a completely different context and background last year when the finance bill was being put together. So at the cross of the 2020 finance bill that was submitted, that eventually became effective from 1st of January this year, measures that were, a lot targeted at providing palliative and incentive, to cushion the impact of the economic crisis that was brought about by COVID-19. So most of the changes that we have in the Finance Act 2020 are essentially more to fair, and I've seen one rolling on your screen at the moment. So if I just mention maybe a couple of them, so the one you had on the screen is a reduction of the minimum tax payable by corporate, and that's quite fundamental, because during the heat of the crisis last year, you will expect that many businesses may turn in losses, and when you turn in loss at the end of the year, the minimum tax rule kicks in, which is essentially taxing your capital. So by the provision, the change that was made in 2019 Finance Act, 0.5% of your top line will have been payable as company's income tax, even if you had made a loss. So, but as a way of providing palliative for business, knowing that may be a huge hit on the bottom line of business, that provision was halved. And that's why we have the minimum tax for large company reduced to 0.5%. So that's one of the change. We also have changes that introduce the possibility for large corporate to be able to claim tax deduction for the disaster relief donations that they made. During the heat of the crisis, a lot of large corporate came together to provide incentives, donations to the government, both in cash and in kind. And prior to the change, there was just a limit to the deduction that could be made, and there were no specific provision that was covering this type of disaster. And tax is a matter of law. If anything isn't covered, it becomes a little bit of lobbying and trying to persuade before you could have deductions for them. So we have that provision introduced into the Finance Act 2020 that is now operational, such that companies and individuals have made donations to this COVID-19 pandemic and any disaster of similar nature that government is going to set up relief for, they're going to be able to claim deduction. So, and you can go on and on that way. There are sectoral incentive, for example, some of the areas of the economy that were badly affected, some provisions were made to provide cushion. Say, for example, the aviation sector, which is one of the most hit business sector. So we have provisions that says, if you are coming back and you are buying aircraft, you are buying spares and parts to be able to keep your airline operational, duties that were previously payable, VAT that was previously payable was waived. So that's one incentive for the aviation, for example. The transport sector also have similar provision. So if you are into commercial transportation, the duty that was payable was reduced to about 10% from the prior 35. So a number of provisions that way. You have provision for agri, you have provision for different kind of sectors. So that's the context we have for the Finance Act 2020, at the heart of it are provisions that are meant to provide some bit of support, in some cases very short-term support, to allow business wither through the storm.
Now let's talk about the unclaimed. One significant change also that came from the Finance Act is the issue of unclaimed dividends in a listed company and unutilized amounts in a dormant account for more than 6 years. I want you to expatiate on that, because many Nigerians have been crying foul of that. If I have my money in a bank and I've not been using it, why should government come and take my money? The government says it's going to put it in a special fund, themselves with the debt management office and all of that. So just please explain. If I have my 1,000 naira, for example, or 1.5, when I was a youth corps member some years ago with a bank, and I've been having it with the bank for years. So if I don't take it now, why should the government take my money?
Well, you're very right. That's we have a number of provisions that way that try to, on one hand, try to sanitize the system to see where our value locking somewhere, and government could have some bit of immediate access to them. And the unclaimed dividend funds and dormant account balances is one of them. I think it's one of the provisions that kind of hits the public heart. But if you look at it quite fundamentally, why do you have unclaimed dividend? So if you invest in a business and you buy shares of company on an annual basis, each year when the companies declare dividends, the dividend warrant or the automatic credit is ideally supposed to go into your bank account. But we've had cases where either because individuals have changed their address, their name, or some don't even realize that they've had a coupon or some bonuses issues on their shares, or for some other reasons, they haven't gone ahead to claim that dividends. Now, this dividend, based on the changes we've had made before, it's supposed to be sitting in an unclaimed dividend fund that is being managed by each of the companies. But this balance is growing, and the government is saying, if we have a situation where an individual that is entitled to dividend hasn't come forward to claim it, and that balance has remained unclaimed for 6 years at the initial stand, for 6 years, so it's not actually also immediate, that fund will be credited into a special unclaimed dividend account. The same with dormant account balances. So you have your 1,000 naira and the account is probably it's gone dormant, it's not been activated, maybe because you didn't provide your BVN, or you didn't even know that you had some 100 naira on a savings account that have yielded some bit of interest over multiple years, and we have a large pool of it. So government is saying that fund will be will be transferred to a special fund account that government will then have immediate access to them. It's actually supposed to be some form of quick fund for the government. However, there is a proviso that when the owner, shows up, then government will release that fund. So maybe essentially what government is trying to do is to say, look, we're not converting this fund forever. It's not a permanent conversion. You won't lose it permanently. When the individual comes forward, so it could be part of way of making sure that the financial inclusion or the link to your BVN and identification of the beneficial owner of these balances actually come forward. So if you are caught up with that kind of a rule where you have unclaimed dividend or you have dormant account balances and it's swept off because it's been over 6 years, there is still some bit of relief for you. All that you need to do
will they give me interest?
To go forward.
Will the government give me interest for my money?
If you your any accrued interest that fund is supposed to have made, there is actually a legitimate reason for you to be able to make that demand. Because essentially government is supposed to be borrowing that funds from you. So
the government should give me interest on that money in my dormant account, or yes, as a shareholder, at an account holder. So it should give me my yields on the said account. If it takes my money,
maybe the question will the balance where it was before, prior to government asking it to be credited to an account it has access to, was it entitled? Is there an interest yielding account?
Yes, because if it was in a bank, if it is in a bank, I'll be getting my interest even if it's 5 naira. All those miserable percentages we see from the bank these days. You would have like what you see in a month, you will just see 5 naira credited to your account and all of that. But at least it will yield something. So if the government takes it from me, why shouldn't the government give me interest back? That is, if I agree for the government to take it. But I think the finance minister said, if you don't want the government to take it, go to your dormant account and take your money.
Absolutely. So that I think the whole essence is to make sure that if you have that fund, and I think as Nigerians, I think we should transfer from being passive in how we manage our funds or how we manage our finances, and all of that. So for me, there is still a legitimate claim for you to go back to the government to say, yeah, this account belongs to me. This account belongs to someone who has entrusted it into my account. Maybe someone who's maybe my parents who are late, and I'm the beneficial owner of that estate or trust, and then you'll be able to make that claim. Because if you leave it in unclaimed dividend trust, the amount that you're going to be entitled to is still the amount that dividend was supposed to have been. So interest-bearing savings account is understandable. So there's some bit of legitimacy in you going back to say, I need some interest on it. But rather than do that, why not go claim your funds and put it back in the account where you can legally demand for interest on it?
Okay, as we close, I know there are many significant changes to 2020 Finance Act, and it's not something we can deal with even on one show. So we need to break it down. But I want you to comment on this in terms of minimum wage earners and people that are low-income earners, exempted from personal income tax. Explain that more.
Right. So just a provision similar to the corporate minimum tax that I explained. If in any year a company makes a loss, the law says there's a minimal amount you must pay as a corporate citizen of the country. So in similar manner, we have a provision that says when your earnings is put into the tax table and you fall below certain threshold, there is a mandatory 1% of your total income that you are supposed to pay, which is your own contribution to nation building. Now, what this Finance Act has done is to say there is a group of people that are actually living below the line, and let's provide exemption for those category of people from paying minimum tax. And the benchmark currently is those who are earning the minimum wage and below. And if my understanding is correct, the minimum wage is currently a 30,000 naira monthly pay. So if you earn 30,000 or 360,000 naira per annum or below, you will not be required to pay any minimum tax or any tax to government, any income tax to government whatsoever. But those who are earning above that will still be exposed to the 1% minimum tax. It's just a provision for those who are really at the far end of the spectrum.
Thank you very much, Yomi, for joining us today. Let's look at this some other time. Just like I said, it has a lot of appendages and with issues under each significant change. Thank you very much, Yomi, for speaking.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be on your show, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you, Yomi. I've been speaking with Yomi Olugbenro, who is the West Africa tax leader at Deloitte Nigeria. That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Please join us again tomorrow, same time on this station. I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be and be the change you want to see. Don't forget to always wear a mask. See you tomorrow. Thank you for watching our video. Please hit the subscribe button below, turn on post notification to follow all our updates.